Welcome to the Bentley Systems training course, where you will learn how to generate design strips for a complex slab model in RAM concept. In this particular video, we're going to be taking a look at one of the drop panels that's present in our model. Now, a drop panel is a thickened area of slab, and this panel can be used for flexural, one-way shear, and punching shear calculations. This is basically what separates it from a drop cap, which should not be included for flexural or one-way shear calculations. Now, as we take a look at this model, let's pay specific attention to the trimming and the intercross-sectional slope limit when setting up our design strips. Now, before we return to our sample model in RAM concept, let's discuss a few key features for trimming in thickened area of slabs. The first concept we're going to take a look at is our single cross-sectional trimming. What this does is it'll reduce the design strip cross-section based on the geometry, and we have several different options available for this depending upon what your slab configuration is. Now, when I'm thinking about something like a drop panel, I want to think about what types of designs the thickened area slab should be included for. Now, for my particular model, I've taken a look at my code requirements, and I've determined that the flexural, one-way shear, and punching shear calculations can all include the thickened area of slab. Now, for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and select no trimming for the cross-sectional trimming in the area of the drop panel, because again, I want the entire full thickened slab to be considered. In addition to taking a look at the single cross-sectional trimming for a drop panel, you may also want to take a look at the intercross-sectional slope limit parameter, again specified in your design span properties. The intercross-sectional trimming reduces the design strip cross-sections based on slope limits. This effectively trims the top and bottom elevations on adjacent cross-sections to limit the slopes between them. This is done because compression and tension forces cannot flow at sharp angles from one cross-section to the next. Intercross-section trimming will affect the cross-sections in design strips that extend through intersecting beams, slab steps, and thickened slab areas like drop caps or drop panels. Now, for our particular model, we're going to go ahead and set the cross-sectional trimming to none and the intercross-sectional slope limit to 0.25. Let's go ahead and return to our sample model in RAM concept. And before we make any changes, I like to go ahead and take a look at the results so I can see where my design strips are standing at this point. My main area of focus that I'm going to be looking at when investigating where my model is right now is the cross-sectional perspective plans in both the latitude and longitude direction. In particular, I'm going to remind myself that I'm looking at the shear core and the trimming options. Now that we've gone over some of those results, I can see that some changes will be needed. Now, in the latitude area, I can see very clearly that the shear core included the thickened area of slab from the perspective plan. This is exactly what I was looking for. Now, when I review the selection properties for these particular design strips, I can see that the cross-sectional trimming is already set to none, and the intercross-sectional slope limit is set to 0.25. The reason for that is because I went ahead and set those up as my default properties, since these are appropriate for the majority of my particular model. Let's go ahead and take a look at the longitude direction. And this is where it might make sense to go ahead and take a look at your results first, because what I'm noticing here is that this design span contains both a drop cap and a drop panel. And when I adjusted this design strip for the drop cap, I went ahead and set them appropriate for the drop cap, because the drop cap I don't want included in my flexural design or my one-way shear design. So I set it up as slab rectangle that basically trimmed off the thickened portion of slab. Now, although that is appropriate for the drop cap, for the drop panel, it's not quite appropriate. So what can I go ahead and do in this particular area? Well, what I would suggest is to go ahead and break this design strip up into 2 design strips, so that way you can define different properties for each particular area. So I'm going to go ahead and use some of my stretching tools for this. And what I want is I want this to basically cover a good portion of the slab, maybe up to the midpoint, and then I'm going to create an additional design span where I can specify the properties that would be more appropriate for the drop panel. Okay, so these parameters are already set up for the drop cap. So I have it already selected, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my layer specific toolbar and use my stretch command. With that command selected, I can go ahead and select the end of this design strip and pull it up. Now what I'm going to do is I can go ahead and use any of these snapping tools to kind of assist me in that process. I'm going to go ahead and just pull that up to there. Okay. In addition to that, let me go ahead and double click on my span segment tool and review the properties. Now these properties are appropriate for my drop panel, so everything looks good so far. Now that I've defined those properties and reviewed them, I'm going to go ahead and go from this end to, I can click on the end point of this design span to there. Okay, I'm going to ask the program to regenerate my strips. Now, let's take a look at the symbols that the program used. Now, as we recall, each end of a design span has some arrows to indicate its support condition. The larger arrow indicates the center line of support, basically where is that design span running, and then the smaller arrow indicates the face of support. Now what we're going to notice is that the arrows have been removed from here. This indicates that this is not a support condition, and here you can see the numbering of the design spans indicated that this is one design span but 2 different sets of properties. Okay, so let's go ahead and perform a calculation and take a look at what changed in particular in the longitude direction. So if I were to return longitude cross-sectional perspective plan, which will give me a good idea about what areas of slab are included in the shear core. At this point, I've satisfied the requirements or how I want the design to be performed for both the drop cap and the drop panel, even though in one direction they're basically in the same span or in the same bay.
If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. If you want to see more such series, consider subscribing to our channel. Thank you, and see you next time.